The wind howled like an angry beast as Marcus Chen checked the temperature gauge outside his research tent. -40 degrees Celsius. He pulled his thick fur hood tighter around his face and smiled. Just another day at the Arctic Research Station. Marcus had been living at this remote location for the past 3 months, studying climate patterns and collecting data. Most people would hate this lonely job, but he loved it. The endless white landscape, the beautiful northern lights, and the pure silence when the storm stopped. It was perfect for him. Tonight's storm was different, though. Marcus noticed it when his equipment started giving strange readings. The numbers on his atmospheric monitor kept jumping up and down in ways he had never seen before. At first, he thought his machines were broken because of the cold, but all his backup systems showed the same weird patterns. "That's not normal," he muttered to himself, tapping the screen of his main computer. The readings showed a huge energy spike about half a mile north of his camp. It was the kind of reading you might get from a lightning strike, except there wasn't any lightning in this blizzard. Marcus knew he should probably stay in his warm, safe tent. The storm was getting worse, and visibility was down to just a few feet. But his scientific curiosity got the better of him. After double-checking his GPS and putting on his best cold weather gear, he stepped out into the storm. The wind hit him like a wall of ice, and snow stung his exposed face. He switched on his powerful flashlight and started walking north, following the GPS coordinates of the energy reading. Every few steps, he had to stop and check his direction. In a whiteout like this, it was easy to get lost and freeze to death. After 20 minutes of fighting through the snow, Marcus saw something that made him stop in his tracks. There was a faint blue glow ahead, barely visible through the swirling snow. As he got closer, he realized he wasn't looking at any natural Arctic phenomenon. Half buried in the snow was what looked like a small spacecraft, about the size of a car. It was sleek and silver, with strange markings along its side that seemed to glow with a soft blue light. A section of its hull was cracked open, and snow was piling up inside. "Hello," Marcus called out, his voice nearly lost in the wind. "Is anyone there?" That's when he saw her. At first, he thought his eyes were playing tricks on him, but as he moved closer, there was no doubt. Lying in the snow near the damaged craft was a woman, but not a human woman. Her skin was a pale blue color, and there were markings on her face that looked like delicate frost patterns. She was wearing some kind of thin suit that seemed totally unsuited for the Arctic cold. The strange woman was barely conscious, her eyes fluttering as snowflakes gathered on her face. Marcus quickly knelt beside her and checked for a pulse, finding one that was way too slow. Her skin felt ice cold, even colder than the air around them. Without hesitation, Marcus made his decision. He might not understand what she was, or where she came from, but he knew she would die if he left her here. Being careful not to cause any injury, he gently picked her up. She was surprisingly light, almost as if she was hollow inside. "Hold on," he told her, even though he wasn't sure if she could understand English. "My tent isn't far. We'll get you warmed up." As he carried her through the storm, Marcus had no idea that this simple act of kindness was about to change not just his life, but the relationship between Earth and the stars forever. Marcus's research tent was built to withstand the harshest Arctic conditions. It had 3 layers of insulation and a powerful heater that kept the temperature at a comfortable 20 degrees Celsius. As he carried the mysterious blue-skinned woman inside, he could feel her shivering against his chest. He carefully laid her down on his cot and wrapped her in his warmest emergency blankets. Her breathing was shallow, and her skin had a strange, almost translucent quality to it. Marcus quickly turned up the heater and put a pot of water on his camping stove to make hot tea. "Can you understand me?" he asked, keeping his voice gentle and calm. "Are you hurt anywhere?" The woman's eyes fluttered open, revealing irises that looked like swirling pools of silver. She looked around the tent with obvious confusion before focusing on Marcus. When she spoke, her voice had a musical quality to it. but the words were unlike anything he had ever heard before. She must have realized he couldn't understand because she reached up to touch a small device on her neck. There was a soft humming sound, and then she spoke again, this time in perfect English. "Thank you," she said weakly. "I would have died out there. My name is Zixera." Marcus tried not to show his surprise at hearing her speak English. "I'm Marcus Chen. You're safe now. Can you tell me what happened? Are you not from Earth?" Zixera managed a small smile. "Is it that obvious?" She pulled the blankets tighter around herself. "I'm a xenobiologist from the Cryostrian system. I was studying Earth's polar regions when my ship malfunctioned in your planet's magnetic field." As her body temperature slowly rose, Zixera's color deepened from pale blue to a richer sapphire shade. Marcus noticed something strange. The air around her seemed to shimmer, like the heat waves above hot pavement in summer. "Your heating device," she said, gesturing to the heater. "Could you turn it up higher?" Marcus adjusted the heater to its maximum setting. "Won't that be too hot? For you, perhaps. But for my species, heat is food." As if to demonstrate, Zixera stretched out her hand toward the heater. The shimmering around her intensified, and Marcus watched in amazement as the visible heat waves seemed to flow directly into her skin. "We evolved on a world with 2 suns," she explained, already looking stronger. "Our bodies absorb and store thermal energy. Being stranded in your Arctic region was like being trapped in a desert without water." Marcus sat down on his folding chair, trying to process everything. "So you're literally eating the heat right now?" "Yes. And your kindness in bringing me to this warm place probably saved my life." Zixera's silver eyes studied him with curiosity. "Most species would run from something different, something alien. But you helped me without hesitation. Why?" "You needed help," Marcus said simply. "It doesn't matter where you're from or what you look like. I couldn't just leave you to freeze." Zixera's expression softened. Such compassion is rare in the galaxy. But her face suddenly became serious. "There's something you need to know. My presence here could bring danger to your world. My people are being hunted by those who want to use our energy-absorbing abilities as weapons. My distress beacon." She paused, looking worried. "It may have activated during the crash." Marcus leaned forward, concerned. "What does that mean?" "It means," Zixera said grimly, "that we might soon have company. And not all of them will be as peaceful as I am." The storm outside had gotten worse, but inside Marcus's tent, an fascinating conversation was taking place. Zixera sat cross-legged on the cot, surrounded by a gentle heat haze, while Marcus made them both hot chocolate. He had already drunk 3 cups of water. The tent was getting very warm with the heater on full power. "So your whole civilization is built around heat?" Marcus asked, handing her a steaming mug. He watched in amazement as the heat from the drink seemed to flow directly into her hands, leaving the chocolate cold. "Yes. Our cities are built around thermal springs and volcanic regions," Zixera explained. "We don't eat food like you do. We absorb energy directly from heat sources." She looked at the cold chocolate with curiosity. "Though I must admit, I'm fascinated by how humans consume energy through these beverages and foods." Marcus wiped sweat from his forehead. "And I'm fascinated by how you can just absorb heat like that. But there's something I don't understand. If your people need so much heat to survive, why come to study Earth's coldest regions?" Zixera's silver eyes lit up with excitement. "That's exactly why. Your Arctic regions are incredible. The way life adapts to survive in such cold conditions, it's revolutionary to our science. Take you, for example." She gestured at Marcus. "Your body maintains a constant internal temperature regardless of the external environment. Do you know how remarkable that is?" Marcus had never thought of it that way. "I guess I just take it for granted. But how do your people deal with cold temperatures naturally?" "We don't," she admitted. "Without our technology, we can't survive long in cold environments. That's why we're studying Earth's creatures. Polar bears, Arctic foxes, and especially humans. You've all evolved amazing ways to deal with the cold." As they talked, Marcus noticed that his research equipment was picking up strange readings again. The screen showed unusual energy patterns forming in the atmosphere above them. Zixera saw them too, and her expression became worried. "Those patterns," she said, moving to look at his computers. "They're similar to the ones that damaged my ship. Your planet's magnetic field is much more complex than we realized. It's creating interference with our standard navigation systems." Marcus thought for a moment. "Is that why you crashed? The magnetic field confused your ship's computers." "Exactly. Our ships are designed to absorb and use thermal energy, just like our bodies. But your magnetic field..." She touched one of the screens, tracing the pattern with her finger. "It's like nothing we've seen before. It's almost alive in how it moves and changes." Suddenly, all the equipment in the tent started beeping at once. The readings were going crazy, and through the howling wind, they heard a deep, rumbling sound from above. "No," Zixera whispered, her blue skin paling. "They're here already. The hegemony must have had ships nearby." "The ones hunting your people?" Marcus asked, moving to look out the tent's small window. "What do we do?" Zixera grabbed his arm. "We need to hide. But it's not that simple. Their scanners can detect heat signatures, and right now I'm giving off enough heat to light up their sensors like a beacon." Marcus looked around his tent at all his climate research equipment. A plan started forming in his mind. "Heat signatures, huh? Well, you're talking to someone who's spent years studying how heat moves in the Arctic. Maybe we can use that to our advantage." Zixera looked at him curiously. "What do you mean?" "I mean," Marcus said, already reaching for his tools, "it's time to show you how humans handle problems. We might not be able to absorb heat like your people, but we're really good at getting creative with what we have." The rumbling sound grew louder, making the tent's metal supports vibrate. Marcus pulled back the tent's window flap and gasped. Through the swirling snow, he could see strange lights in the sky. Not the usual green and blue of the northern lights, but angry reds and purples that seemed to pulse with energy. "Those aren't ships we're seeing," Zixera explained, her voice tense. "It's the effect their engines have on your atmosphere. The hegemony uses cold fusion drives that freeze the air around them. They're probably still in orbit, but they're already affecting your weather." As if to prove her point, the temperature outside dropped suddenly. Marcus's equipment showed it had fallen another 20 degrees in just minutes. The wind was getting stronger too, howling like 1,000 angry wolves. "How many ships?" Marcus asked, trying to stay calm. From these readings, Zixera studied his computers. "At least 3 capital ships. The hegemony doesn't believe in small search parties." She looked at Marcus with worried silver eyes. "I'm so sorry. I've brought their attention to your world, to your research station. I should never have activated my emergency beacon." Marcus shook his head. "You would have died if you hadn't. Sometimes staying alive means taking risks." He checked his satellite phone. No signal. The strange atmospheric disturbance was blocking all communication. They were completely cut off from the outside world. "You don't understand," Zixera said, pacing the tent. "The hegemony doesn't care about individual lives. They want my people's ability to absorb and store energy. They think they can use it to power weapons, to create soldiers who can survive in any environment." She touched the wall of the tent, frost forming under her fingers. "They'll tear this place apart looking for me." Marcus watched the frost spread. "You're not absorbing heat anymore. Are you doing that on purpose?" "I have to," she replied. "Every bit of heat I absorb makes me easier to detect. But it's dangerous. If I get too cold, I could go into hibernation. And if that happens..." She didn't finish the sentence. Outside, the strange lights were getting brighter. Marcus's research equipment was picking up more atmospheric disturbances, all centered about 30 kilometers above them. The hegemony ships were getting closer. Can they track your ship? Marcus asked, already thinking about their options. The crash damaged its energy core. It's cold and dead now. They won't detect it in this storm. Zixera hugged herself, shivering slightly. But they'll start scanning the surface soon. Their technology can detect any heat source warmer than its surroundings. Marcus looked around his tent at all his research equipment. Years of studying Arctic weather patterns had taught him a lot about how heat moved in cold environments. What if we could hide you somewhere they wouldn't think to look? Somewhere that would naturally mask your heat signature. Zixera's silver eyes widened. What do you mean? Before Marcus could answer, all his equipment screens went black. When they came back on, they showed a message in glowing red letters. Atmospheric SKN, INITA. Heavy. They're starting their search, Zixera whispered. We don't have much time. Marcus grabbed his Arctic survival gear and started pulling out equipment. Then we better move fast. I have an idea, but you'll have to trust me. He looked at her seriously. How much do you know about ice caves? From above, there was another deep rumble, and the strange lights in the sky grew brighter. The hegemony ships were getting closer, and soon they would begin their ground search. Whatever Marcus was planning, they needed to do it quickly. Their time was running out. There's a network of ice caves about half a mile from here, Marcus explained as he quickly packed his emergency bag. I've been studying them as part of my research. They're special because they have geothermal vents running underneath them. Zixera looked up from helping him gather equipment. Geothermal vents. You mean heat sources? Exactly. Marcus smiled as he grabbed his mapping tablet. The heat from deep underground creates dozens of small warm spots throughout the cave system. The hegemony scanners would pick up these heat signatures, right? Yes, but Zixera's silver eyes widened as she understood. They wouldn't be able to tell which heat signature was mine because there would be too many natural ones. Marcus, that's brilliant. They worked quickly, packing only what they absolutely needed. Marcus grabbed his most important research equipment, especially his thermal imaging gear. Outside, the strange lights in the sky were getting brighter, casting eerie purple shadows on the snow. We need to move fast, Marcus said, checking his GPS. But first, we need to hide your tracks. He pulled out several small devices from his research equipment. These are thermal dispersal units. I use them to study how heat moves through snow. We can modify them to create false heat trails. Zixera watched in amazement as Marcus quickly rewired the devices. You're using simple technology to confuse advanced alien scanners. My people would never think of something like this. Sometimes the simplest solutions are the best ones, Marcus said, finishing the modifications. Okay, here's the plan. We'll plant these devices in different directions, making it look like someone ran off in multiple ways. The real trick is what we're going to do with your natural heat output. He handed her a modified thermal suit from his emergency gear. Put this on over your clothes. I've reversed the insulation layer. Instead of keeping heat in, it should help spread your heat signature out over a larger area. Between that and the cave's natural heat spots, their scanners won't know what to focus on. They stepped out into the storm, which had gotten even worse. The wind cut through their clothes like icy knives, and the strange lights from the hegemony ships made it hard to see clearly. Marcus quickly planted the thermal devices in a star pattern around the tent, each one creating a false trail in the snow. As they moved toward the caves, Marcus used his knowledge of the terrain to keep them hidden. They walked only on rocky patches where they wouldn't leave footprints and used the wind direction to their advantage. Every few minutes, they could hear the deep rumbling of the hegemony ships getting closer. There, Marcus pointed to a dark opening in a snow-covered hill. That's the main entrance to the cave system. He checked his tablet, which showed a map of the underground tunnels. The strongest geothermal spots are about 200 meters in. We'll head there first. Just as they reached the cave entrance, Zixera grabbed Marcus's arm. Listen. They could hear a new sound above the wind, a high-pitched whining that seemed to make the air itself vibrate. "What is that?" Marcus asked, though he had a feeling he knew the answer. "Landing craft," Zix-Era whispered. "They're starting their ground search. We need to get underground now." Marcus took one last look at the purple-lit sky before leading the way into the cave. As they moved deeper underground, he could only hope his understanding of Arctic geology would be enough to outsmart alien technology. Behind them, the whining sound of the hegemony vessels grew louder, and strange shadows began to dance across the cave entrance. The ice cave was like an underground maze. Marcus led the way using his tablet's map, while the sound of hegemony ships grew fainter as they went deeper. The walls of the cave sparkled with ice crystals, and in some places, warm air drifted up through small cracks in the ground. "Perfect," Marcus whispered, checking his thermal readings. "There are at least 30 different heat spots in this section of the cave. Your heat signature should blend right in with them." Zix-Era nodded, but suddenly froze in place. "They're inside the cave system now. I can feel their scanning beams." She pointed to the ceiling, where faint red lines of light were starting to move through the ice. Marcus quickly pulled her into a side tunnel. "How many?" "At least 6 search teams," she said, her voice tight with worry. "They're using cold suits that let them track heat sources. We're lucky they're not using cryostrians for this search. My people would spot me instantly." They moved carefully through the tunnels, using Marcus's knowledge of the cave system to stay one step ahead of the search teams. Every time the red scanning beams got close, they would duck into a new tunnel where the geothermal vents created multiple heat signatures. "Your plan is working," Zix-Era whispered after they avoided another search team. "Their scanners are getting confused by all the natural heat sources. I can hear them talking on their communication channels. They're frustrated." Suddenly, Marcus's tablet beeped with an alert. "The temperature in the cave is dropping fast," he said, showing her the readings. "The hegemony ships must be using their cold fusion drives to freeze the entire area." "They're trying to eliminate the natural heat sources," Zix-Era realized. "If they freeze everything, my heat signature will be the only one left." Marcus thought quickly. "We need to get to the central chamber. It has the strongest geothermal vent in the whole system. They won't be able to freeze that one easily." They moved faster now, no longer trying to be completely quiet. The temperature kept dropping, and ice was forming on the walls in thick sheets. Marcus could see his breath freezing in the air, and even Zix-Era was starting to shiver. "There," Marcus pointed to a large opening ahead. "That's the central chamber." But just as they reached it, red scanning beams cut across their path from both directions. Metallic footsteps echoed through the tunnels. The hegemony search teams had found them. "No time to go back," Marcus said, pulling Zix-Era into the central chamber. It was a huge cave with a steaming vent in the center, creating a warm fog that filled the space. "Quick, get close to the vent." As Zix-Era moved toward the heat source, Marcus pulled out his last piece of modified equipment, his thermal imaging scanner. He had rewired it to emit heat pulses instead of just detecting them. "What are you doing?" Zix-Era asked as the footsteps got closer. "Creating a light show," Marcus grinned. He activated the scanner at full power, pointing it at the fog above the vent. The heat pulses hit the warm mist and scattered, creating dozens of heat signatures that danced around the chamber like ghostly flames. The first hegemony soldiers appeared at the chamber entrances. They were tall figures in metallic suits, their helmets glowing with red scanning lights. But as they tried to track Zix-Era's heat signature, their scanners went wild with false readings. "Impossible," they heard one of them say through a metallic speaker. "There are heat signatures everywhere. Which one is the target?" Marcus smiled at Zix-Era. "Sometimes the best way to hide something isn't to make it invisible. It's to make everything else look just like it." The hegemony soldiers moved into the central chamber, their red scanning beams cutting through the warm mist. Thanks to Marcus's modified equipment, the whole cave looked like a carnival of heat signatures, making it impossible for them to spot Zix-Era. "Spread out," ordered their leader, his voice sounding mechanical through his suit's speaker. "The target has to be here somewhere." Marcus and Zixera pressed themselves against the warm rocks near the geothermal vent. The heat signatures from Marcus's device kept bouncing around the chamber, creating a perfect distraction. But they both knew it wouldn't last forever. "My rescue beacon," Zixera whispered suddenly. "It's picking up a response signal." Before Marcus could ask what that meant, the whole cave started shaking. The hegemony soldiers looked up as a new sound filled the air, a deep humming that made the ice crystals on the walls vibrate. "Multiple ships entering the atmosphere," one of the soldiers reported. "They're not ours." Through gaps in the cave ceiling, they could see the purple lights of the hegemony ships being pushed back by new lights. These ones a bright, warm gold color. The temperature in the cave started rising rapidly. "The Creostrian science fleet," Zixera said excitedly. "They received my distress signal." The hegemony soldiers raised their weapons, but suddenly their suits started malfunctioning. The golden light from above was somehow interfering with their cold fusion technology. "Our systems are failing," one soldier reported. "The heat, it's overwhelming our suits." Marcus watched in amazement as beams of golden light cut through the cave ceiling, melting perfect circles in the ice. Through these holes, figures began descending. They looked similar to Zixera, with blue skin and silver eyes, but they wore uniforms covered in glowing patterns. "Step away from the human and our scientist," one of the Creostrians commanded. Their voice was firm, but not threatening. The hegemony leader stepped forward. "This is a legal pursuit under galactic law. The Creostrians are harboring dangerous technology." "Actually," Zixera interrupted, stepping into view, "what you're doing is illegal. You invaded a developing world and endangered its inhabitants. And thanks to Marcus's help, we now have proof of your actions." She held up Marcus's tablet, which had been recording everything since they entered the caves. "The Galactic Council will be very interested in this footage." The hegemony soldiers looked at each other. Their suits were still malfunctioning, and they were now outnumbered by the Creostrian rescue team. After a tense moment, their leader lowered his weapon. "Retreat," he ordered. "Fall back to the ships." As the hegemony soldiers departed, the Creostrian commander approached Marcus and Zixera. "Dr. Zixera, are you unharmed?" Then, looking at Marcus with interest, "And you must be the human who helped her." "Marcus Chen," he introduced himself. "I just did what anyone would do." The commander shook her head. "No, you did much more. You showed remarkable ingenuity using only basic technology. And more importantly, you helped one of our people without knowing anything about her." She smiled. "The Creostrian Science Council will want to hear about this." "What about the hegemony?" Marcus asked, looking up at the holes in the cave ceiling where golden light still streamed in. "They won't trouble your world again," Zixera assured him. "With this evidence, plus the illegal invasion of Earth's space, they'll be facing serious consequences from the Galactic Council." The commander nodded in agreement. "And speaking of Earth, Dr. Zixera, would you say this incident proves that humans are ready for more direct scientific exchange?" Zixera looked at Marcus and smiled. "I would say this incident proves humans have much to teach us, not just about surviving in cold environments, but about using simple solutions to solve complex problems." 6 months had passed since that stormy night in the Arctic. Marcus stood at the window of his new office, looking out at the remarkable sight before him. Where his lonely research tent once stood, there was now a large research facility built into the snow and ice. The building was a perfect blend of human and Creostrian technology, with warm golden lights glowing softly in the polar darkness. Still admiring the view, Zixera asked as she entered the office. She was wearing an Earth-style winter coat now, though she didn't really need it. "The next group of students will be here soon." Marcus smiled. After the incident with the hegemony, the Galactic Council had approved limited contact between humans and Creostrians. This research station was the first result, a place where both species could learn from each other. Hard to believe it all started because of a broken heater, he said, turning to face her. Zixera laughed. You mean because of human kindness? My people still talk about how you risk your life to help a complete stranger. An alien, no less. Speaking of your people, Marcus said, checking his tablet, how are the new thermal suits working out? The tablet showed designs for new cold weather gear, created by combining human insulation techniques with cryostrian heat storing technology. It was just one of many projects they were working on together. They're amazing, Zixera replied. Thanks to your ideas about heat distribution, our scientists can now work in cold environments for twice as long. And I heard the human Arctic researchers love their new heated suits too. A soft chime sounded throughout the building. On one of the screens in Marcus's office, they could see a group of people approaching the station. This month's batch of students, both human and cryostrian, ready to teach them about Arctic survival. Zixera asked with a grin. As long as you handle the part about absorbing heat through your skin, Marcus replied. That still freaks out some of the human students. They walked together through the facility's warm corridors. The walls were lined with displays showing ongoing research projects, everything from new environmental protection technologies to improved weather prediction systems. Both species had discovered they could accomplish so much more by working together. Oh, I almost forgot, Zixera said as they neared the main entrance. The Galactic Council sent their annual report this morning. The hegemony has officially withdrawn all claims against my people. They're too embarrassed by how easily their advanced technology was defeated by, what did they call it? Primitive human ingenuity. Marcus chuckled. Sometimes the simplest solution is the best one. That's becoming our motto around here. They reached the airlock where the new students were waiting. Through the window, Marcus could see the excitement on their faces. Humans and cryostrians, all eager to learn from each other. You know, Zixera said softly, when my ship crashed that night, I thought it was the worst thing that could happen. Instead, it turned out to be the beginning of something wonderful. She touched the wall of the research station. Two species learning from each other, solving problems together, proving that kindness and curiosity are universal. Marcus nodded as the airlock began to cycle. And all because of a broken heater and a stormy night. The doors opened, and the students entered, their voices filled with excitement and questions. As Marcus and Zixera began their welcoming speech, the Arctic sun peeked over the horizon, its light reflecting off the station's golden panels. Inside, humans and aliens worked together, proving that sometimes the greatest discoveries start with the simplest acts of kindness.